All right, so going to talk about some general strategy for SVS or the cross server war. So reconnaissance is important as with any battle in real life or on a game. You always want to know as much as you can about your enemy as possible. This will include prior to the battle. Obviously, we get access to their map. We'll scout hive locations and we'll send the grid coordinates throughout the leadership of the different alliances. Most importantly, the assault team. Obviously, they'll be the ones going over to the other map and attacking. I did this last SVS. Unfortunately, because things were all rushed and we're just kind of flying at the seat of our pants, it was only handed off to the top two alliances. Obviously, since then, we brought more into the fold, try and bring the server together more so it'll go out to the leadership of all the alliances. Grid locations will be for the hives, but we'll also make note of the priority players on the enemy teams. Obviously, usually this is going to be level 80s. They're going to be the biggest concern because they can take out any of our mid-level players. And as we saw last time, sometimes you got someone who dumps a whole lot of money, and those Valhalla units are something to watch out for. Um, we'll take note of the locations for all their top players, at least off the start. They'll be able to tell where they are. Obviously, once things kick off, if they're participating, they're going to start moving around. Another way that we can do reconnaissance, this last time we had SVS Warzone, just before we had the actual cross server war event, and the server we were going against was in there. So I was able to find a number of the top players and screenshot the builds they had put up there. At the same time, if you're one of our top players, keep that in mind that you may want to think about whether or not you want to put your best marches in your SVS Warzone setup, because you're going to allow them to potentially do the same thing if you're on the leaderboard. The strategy is really going to change depending upon the power matchup. Obviously, just like we've seen with War of Odinium, sometimes you end up against a server that is younger than you and you have a lot more power, just as much as we can end up against someone who is way stronger than us. Obviously, strategy is going to change. If we know that we have the power, then things are a lot easier. A couple days before the battle stage hits, so obviously we find out about this ahead of time. All the alliances that are participating, the leadership is going to need to send out alliance mail or talk in their alliance chats and get attendance checks for all the available players. So I'm willing to take general lead on this. Um, if everyone gets me the names of those people and the levels, I'll start breaking people up. If they have a preference on whether they'd be on want to be on the assault team or the defensive team, put that with it as well. Because obviously it's better if the person feels more comfortable with assault or defense, they're more likely to perform better. Uh, but we do have to be cognizant of trying to divide our power appropriately between both sides. You don't want to leave either battlefield lopsided. And as you just saw, we'll split it up. So this is the general layout of the map. Obviously, when you look at the server map on your phone, it's a little kind of canted at an angle, but generally this is what it looks like. That outer rim is all your level 1 ruins. The next ring inside of that with the squares are your level 2 ruins. The stars is your level 3, and then in the center there you have your silos and your capital building. So generally you're going to have a triangular shape just like that, and that's going to be what makes up the battle zone. Then you have the capital, those ruins, and the capital, that's going to be the primary focus of what's going on. So just to kind of highlight this, you can see that's where they're going to be fighting. Obviously, this can be on either side, so it could be on the left side there, it can be down at the bottom. It's all a matter of what the server leaders for each server select. Um, they will choose this prior to the battle, but we can look at this a couple of ways depending upon hive locations and power distribution. So if we're going against another server and they have us completely outmatched in one, their top alliance, they have some 80s that we just know are going to be a problem. We probably don't want to have our battle zone in their hive location. So if they're on the west side, we probably want to go on the east side to start out because obviously you don't want to put their hive right in your path to the capital. At the same time, if we have the advantage, we can always choose one that has multiple hives of the enemy. If we know that they're not going to be able to stop us, we can use that to our advantage to allow us to burn hives down in the process of taking the capital and the ruin, our battle zone selected. But we won't know the enemy's chosen battle zone until everything goes to kick off. So this is where people need to be paying attention. As soon as we can see where the battle zones were selected, then the players can move into or out of the hostile area. By this, I mean, if the enemy chooses the east side of the map and there's a hive there, when you see that that's there, if you want to, you can teleport out of there somewhere else on the map just to get yourself out if you're not participating, or if you want to move yourself to a more tactically advantageous location. If you aren't participating, and especially if you don't want to worry about porting, then you need to shield prior to the start. You cannot shield inside the battle zone. If you are already in there with a shield before it starts, the shield will stay. As we saw before, the battle stage lasted approximately 2 hours, so I mean, you don't even really have to worry about a 24-hour. So for the assault team, when they go over to the other server, and we'll just go with the south section of this map, just make it similar. All our people start teleporting in. Generally, from what we saw, it teleports people in somewhere along the outer edge of the map in that battle zone. At that point, we want to try and cap those outer ruins and then work our way in to the inner ruins in the capital. We'll cap those and then ultimately cap the capital. And again, this is where strategies can differ. So if we know that it's generally even matched and they're going to put up a fight, or if they're stronger, then we might want to be cautious on rushing into the capital off the start. Whereas if we know that we have the power player in the matchup, then that power player can shoot straight to the capital while our other high and mid levels start clipping out all those ruins, working their way into the center, and then they can always reinforce the capital. After that's all situated, players can spread out, and these blue blocks are just to simulate some enemy alliance hive locations. At that point, you can start hitting their hives and start burning their players, get some individual points on the side. That's also kill points overall for our server as well. On the defense side, it's equally important as the assault on the opposing server. You need to be actively scanning the battle zone. Obviously, the assault, you're just rushing in, hitting your targets, trying to burn things down your path. Defensive is another ball game because their assault team's coming in trying to burn everything in their path, and you have to find them, hunt them down, and take them out before they can do any damage, or at least any serious damage. Non-hostile players, meaning people that are in our server but aren't actively attacking, can still contribute with callouts. By this, I mean, this last SVS, trying to scan that large of an area, sometimes you're going to miss things. And one of the mid-level alliances on our server started getting attacked by an enemy combatant, and they called it out in world chat, gave the grid location. I teleported over there and took out that enemy, wiped them and then moved on. It's a large span of area. Obviously, you're talking about roughly 25% of the map. So there's certain things to look out for, make it easier to spot the enemy. One, when you look at the server map and you're at the actual map view where you can see all the different bases, you and your allies are going to be light blue in your name. Other people in the server not in your alliance are that orangish color, but during cross server, the enemy server, their nameplates are in red. So look for red nameplates. And obviously, if you see enemy march lines in the battle zone, it's a good practice to trace that back to its origin, and there's a good chance that it can lead you to one of the enemy bases. That was one thing that I looked for a lot. Not to toot my own horn or anything, I'm not amazing, but I was level 73, and I was ranking in kills with up just behind the level 80s. So conservation of your ports, shields, and vitality is needed to maintain operational superiority. Again, you need to keep in mind that this is going on for 2 hours. So if you run through everything off the start and then you end up stuck somewheres and a big player from the other server comes in, you're SOL, and they're just going to run over you. Excuse me. Shields can still come in handy. Again, if they have a high level 80 that manages to sneak in somewhere and he's not seen yet, you can always teleport off to the side, shield up real quick if he's hunting you down, and kind of force him to move elsewhere. Again, that's a place where that call out will come in handy. Vitality, obviously, you only have but so much, and it costs every time you attack someone. And we'll go into that with the vitality conservation with the plan. So again, going back to the map, we'll say that they chose the west side of our map for their battle zone. So this is our server, and we're defending. So you can see the little black dots there. Just kind of put them out to the side. This is generally how I operated. And again, this is also going to be dependent on people's resources, whether you have a bunch of teleports, whether you have, shields, vitality, whatever you have, and whatever you're willing to spend. Obviously, some players, have a large stock and others don't spend anything on the game at all and can't really afford to get a bunch, and that's fine. But that's going to change how you play. This is how I position myself, is I'll sit on the outside of that battle zone and I'll scan around. And when enemies start porting into our server to attack and I see them, I port over to them, I hit them and burn their base. At that point, we're moved in over there, we can port back out. This is where there's a couple ways that you can play this. So one thing that kind of bothered me about our enemies' actions, and I'd started out doing it at the beginning of the cross server event, was doing triple attacks, because if you triple hit somebody, obviously you port them, it kicks them back to their server. What I started doing about halfway through the event that I thought was more efficient, especially for use of vitality, is I would go in, I'd hit them once, crush all their forces, and then I would teleport back, and I keep an eye on them. And if I saw that they had repaired their troops and they went to sound out another march, I teleport back in, I crush them again. One, you give yourself the chance to get more kill points, but if you teleport them back, one, you send them back to potentially be a thorn in our assault team side. And honestly, unless they repair all their stuff, they're just, a bump on a log. They're just a paperweight sitting in the middle of the battle zone doing nothing anyway. It's up to you. If you want to spend the vitality and port them back, by all means. Again, I'm just looking at conserving resources over that 2-hour span, to last the battle. If you blow through everything right off the start, then you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage. So just to simulate some of our hive locations, is not perfect, but it's almost kind of like our few of our top alliance hives right there. So enemies poured in, and they start hitting different things. The ruin, they start hitting the hive there near the battle zone. This again goes back to what defensive players have to manage. So one, you can look at the world map and you'll be able to see if one of our ruins was capped by an enemy player, or if the hive's getting hit. Again, that's where those non-combatant players in our server can do call outs in the world chat, let them know that they're being hit. If they can get the grid location or you have their hive's location, you can just trace back that march line, hunt them down, pour it in, wipe them out. Done. So if one of their big players comes in and he rushes to the capital and takes it over, everybody that is within that general range. Obviously, it doesn't make sense if you're level 62 and it's a level 80 that capped it. There's no point in sending your march. It's a waste of troops for no reason whatsoever. But legitimately, if you can damage them or take them out, you need to be hitting that capital. And if we need to, again, this is where communication is key in so many facets of this. But you can start working with other players to mass rally if need be on that opponent. And we got to do whatever we got to do what we got to take that capital back. That capital is absolute priority. Reason being is that the winner is decided by whichever server controls the enemy server's capital the longest. So we control their capital as well as our own, then we have nothing to worry about. There's nothing that they can do. They can take all the ruins and kill all the players that they want. Doesn't matter. Capital is paramount. Those other pieces only fall into play if there's a tie, which is unlikely unless both servers go completely on the offensive and neither defend or try to take back their own capital. It's about the only way that that happens. So the top players on the enemy server, they're also going to be priority, but they're going to fall obviously below the capital. Once we have capital, taking them out so that they can't move around the battlefield freely and take out our other forces that are mid-level, that's going to be important. Ruins are secondary along with the enemy forces. Ruins are that tiebreaker. So if both servers control the enemy capital for the same amount of time, then it's going to be who can control the most ruins the longest. And then beyond that, it's going to be enemy kills. So that's where after everything else is taken care of, you can start hitting enemy hives. They're going to be your tertiary objective on the enemy server. Make sure you play smart. Again, think about what the power matchup is. So this last go around, I was level 73 and I poured it into the middle of the battle zone, hitting people, and I sat there and was hitting them as they came in, and a level 80 came in and crushed me. So that was probably about 20 minutes in. I'd poured out and repaired pretty much one march and played the other hour and a half or so with one march, and still managed to finish, I think, 8th between both servers and kill points. So that was the eye-opening moment that really made me start playing a little smarter, porting out and porting back in. Just pay attention to that. Be cognizant that if you don't have a stock of teleports to where you can hop in and out, that when you hop in there, you are going to be at risk of getting crushed by someone higher. That's where that target, call out comes out. Back to communication. That is going to be huge. That was a huge issue before. We can start chats if we need to for the assault team and the defensive team, since each one is likely to have players from different alliances. All it'll take is a couple creative friend requests to where people can, you know, invite the necessary people into those chats. Those can also be used during the battle for easy communication with each other uh, when they need to be reinforced. Because there's a lot of just everyone going off solo, doing their own thing, which, if we got the complete upper hand, that's all fine and good. If you got nothing to worry about. But if it's a close fight or they have the advantage on the power scale, I mean, we really need to be coordinated. We really need to communicate and we need to move together. And if necessary, we need to rally on the bigger players. We can't be hitting them onesies and twosies here. They're spaced out to where they got, plenty of time to do repairs and everything. If we need to get, people that can damage them together, rally and crush them. But those target call outs are going to be big for everybody. If you're on the defensive team or the assault team, if you see an enemy, in the area that you cannot take on, like, that they just have the level advantage on you or something, or you had a previous go at them already, call it out. That way, one of the bigger players can move in, take them out, everybody keep moving along. You don't want to let them start moving around the battlefield, not tell anybody, and them start, running rampant, damaging a bunch of our people's troops when you could have potentially stopped it just by saying something. So don't be afraid to call that out. On the defensive side, same thing. You don't want them to start running rampant on our alliance hives and our server map. You don't want them taking all the ruins or the capital. And those non-combatant members on our server, if you're online, you can do just as much good by keeping an eye out and just calling it out for the players that are making the attacks. Again, rally if necessary. This whole solo thing, some of it's egos, some of it's everyone wanting to be number one, and I get it. Number one's awesome, bragging rights, more points, and especially because they're talking about adding in this point store for SVS. A lot of people were disappointed in those rewards from previous, so they're supposed to be adding in a store. You rack up points, you can save them, they don't disappear, so you can combine points from multiple SVSs for better rewards. So that goes towards that. Again, I get it. But at the same time, getting that win is more important than you getting your personal points. It's all about being a team as a server, not just by yourself, not just in your alliance, but the entire server. It's about being a team. And then, all those people that worked hard are going to get better rewards for us winning instead of just one person gallivanting off on their own, doing their own thing. So work together as you need to, move through the objectives, take those capitals on both sides, hold them as well as we can. If any issues pop up, or if you're holding something and they're chipping away at your soldiers and you know that you need to pull out and repair, call it out. That way somebody else can move in, reinforce, you can pull out, repair, move back in, they can always pull back out and move on, or vice versa. But again, this is generally SVS in a nutshell. If you got any questions, don't hesitate to ask.